the cloud and share my screen. Okay, so first time we did this was in spring 2021. We changed the format this time around, and I'm hoping that this will all be about, you know, just practicing problems. I don't want to spend a lot of time teaching the material, but at the same time, I am available for you guys, shooting, if you have any problem, like you're deficient on a certain topic and you want me to kind of like have a one-on-one session with you, I personally do not mind. I'm all in for helping you guys to pass the LTAM exam. So feel free to bug me anytime. The other thing I'd also say is that with you guys, your permission, and then if you guys are okay, I want to be checking on you guys in person via phone call. You know, pretty much making sure that you have a schedule, you are practicing as much as you can, and so on and so forth. So with you guys, your permission, and if you're okay, I do have I can get your cell contact from Howard, and be reaching out in the course of the week to check on how you guys are doing with LTAM. Good. So all of you should have gotten the manual from my very good friend Yufeng. So like I said, the set. I plan to just focus on 4 or 5 practice exams from Yufeng's manual. I personally like his manual because of how he teaches the material from first principle, unlike other textbook. When I took it, that was back in 2019. Yeah, I used ASM primarily with Yufeng's text, but I think I spent about 70% of my time reading Yufeng's text, and then just worked all the 13 ASM practice exams, which I classified to be 30% of my time. I highly encourage you guys to take advantage of the manual. I encourage you to use the manual to review certain portions that you might be deficient in. So so I have a particular order here that I'd want to talk about stuff. So again, the program is all about practicing working practice problems, right? So I'm going to be assigning 1 practice exams, or if you guys want to go brute force, you know, I can assign 2 practice exams per week. I think that's reasonable to do. But I can start with 1 practice exam because, again, I want to be very realistic, and I also want to make sure that you guys, after working the practice questions, you have enough time to review the solutions. And here is one thing that I say about doing practice exams when I took it. A little bit ambitious, but hey, you know, we're all in for passing this exam, right? So anytime I take a practice exam, I try to retake the practice exam to make sure I can score at least 90% after, you know, after having seen the questions for the very first time. So if I highly encourage you guys to kind of like adopt that strategy. I think it's really helpful to just work the problem out the first time, and don't worry if you don't pass the exam. The focus here is to give you the opportunity to make as many mistakes as possible, right? And then put you in a situation where you can minimize the sort of mistakes that you're likely to make on the real exam. So don't be bogged down at all if you don't do well on this practice exam. Your goal is to make sure you focus on the solutions and learn as much as you can from the solution, and possibly retake the exam and try to make sure you score at least 90% on the exam. Good. So let me just go through certain things. So I will assign the first exam to do for the week towards the end of the session. But the other thing I'd like to say is that I highly encourage all of you to review UFAN's manual. I think it's going to be on chapter, what's it, chapter again? Okay, well, it's this part 16, which has to do with maximizing partial credit for written answer portion. I highly encourage all of you to make sure you read this text, and going forward, I hope actually on chapter 77, exam taking strategies. It's written well, with examples of what you can do, not just some really general suggestions. These are really specific suggestions to help you optimize your time and also minimize the mistakes that you make on the exam, and so on and so forth. So please try to make sure review all of these before next week. It's not a terrible chapter at all to review. Then the other thing I'd say is, well, most of the solutions to recent exams can also be found in UFAN's manual. So I personally co-authored most of the solutions with UFAN. Scrolling down a little bit, so oops, I see the question. Everyone is here now. Perfect. Okay. So I encourage you guys to review the SOA solution. I'm pretty sure some of you already have started doing the published SOA exams. Something really unique about our solution, myself and Yufeng, as I personally think that these solutions are written to help students learn the basics and learn how to set things up from first principles, right? So I'd highly encourage all of you to review these solutions if you haven't really done that yet. The published exams, of course, are really, really important. So you can play along with the published exam with the new exams that I will be reviewing with you, which of course are all in UFAN's study manual. Okay, so the other thing I have in stock here is to get in touch in person via phone call with your permission. I think I already have talked about that, so I can move on. Okay, so this stuff is just bothering me here. I'm sure you guys can see it because Zoom would hide it. So let me just pin it. Okay, good. All right, so let me now talk about passing LTAM exam and what tales I tell a lot of people. So I'm a member of the International Association of Black Actuaries, and I volunteer my time to help people on exam P and LTAM specifically. And the tale that I often tell folks is that passing LTAM can be really, really challenging. In fact, in my opinion, LTAM is the most challenging preliminary exam. What are my reasons? The reason is not only do you have to demonstrate understanding of the material, you also have to make sure you can endure on this exam. You need stamina to pass this exam. And that is the reason why practicing as much as you can is important. So the three tales that I tell is that student A, thinks that, oh, I can just memorize the formulas and solve a couple published SOA exams and I should be fine. Well, I think 90 to 95% of the time, like that's not gonna work pretty well with LTAM. You can't just memorize formulas without really understanding the intuition behind the formulas and think that LTAM can be overridden. I personally don't think that can happen. I've seen a lot of students do this and they end up taking the exam a couple times before, coming back to the real world where they realize, no, I need to change my strategy and, and some of them end up actually adopting what the right strategy would be and then end up passing the exam. So We don't want to be the person who would just memorize formulas and without understanding the intuition behind the formulas. The second tail is, well, I found some of my students who went through me since I started doing mentoring people in 2019. Some people really, and you can tell, they understand in the material, they know the formulas, they know how to apply the formulas. Their problem is stamina, and their problem is that they are not time efficient when they are taking the routine. My reason when I interviewed some of them is they only solve one or two practice exams and then think they're okay. And most of them actually do the practice exam leisurely. I don't really encourage that for LTAM. For LTAM, try to sit down 4 hours, practice that at least 3 or 4 or 5 times, and see the pain you have to go through in order to survive the real thing. So it's one of the things that I'm going to stress on really for this class. So the second person, of course, knows the material, understands the formula, but time is the problem for this person. So the third person is what I want all my students to become. We want to be able to optimize understanding and memorization of the formulas. Of course, you can't do it without memorizing the formulas, right? So we want to make sure we are optimizing, memorizing formulas, understanding the intuition behind the formulas, and learn the strategies to do what to be time efficient on the exam. And so throughout my demonstration, 4 weeks with you, I'm going to be showing some of the things that I teach people to do in order to beat time. And I can talk about some of them leisurely. One really important concept is really important concept is um, uh, using the calculator. I've got an emulator version of the calculator right here on my screen. So I'm going to be using this emulator to do some of the demonstrations as time goes on. So one of the ways that I teach folks is, one, start learning how to do what? Store variables in your calculator. Let me show you an example of this, again, verbally. I had a question open down. I think it was from spring 2020, spring 2021. So spring 2021, I actually wrote something down. Spring 2021, question number 8, and I can navigate to the solution that I co-authored with you, Fan. So let me look for spring 2021, problem number 8. Here it has to do with the alive, the alive death model, basically. So here is an example of, let me actually show the question first. So this really basic question, right? And this follows the standard sickness death model, something that I will be reviewing pretty soon. I'm going to be reviewing the LTAM table itself. So assuming we all know how to do this, obviously I would assume, I would agree that you would probably know how to work this problem, right? But must we really spend about 5-6 minutes on this particular question? Personally, I don't think so. I think this problem can be worked out probably in 2 minutes if you can learn to use the calculator. How do you do this? Set it up. When you set the model up, how to compute is one thing that I want all my students to learn. For example, when I set things up, our focus here, like the way we have things set up, our focus is to make this guy the subject. You don't necessarily, where's my pen? You don't necessarily have to show on your script. For example, I'm just going to make a hypothetical example. So you have ax plus, let's see, y is equal to what, bx plus 1. You want to make x the subject. On the exam, or you want to find the value of x, okay, on the exam, you can eyeball things, or you can shift all the variables to one side. Now, here's what a lot of students would do on the exam. Now, pretend I said you need to look for the value of y from the LTAM table. You also need to look for the value of what b from the LTAM table, and as well as a. And all of this will lead you into estimating x. Here's what a lot of students would do. They would of course, like the LTAM table is given to you on on the exam. Let's pretend I'm going to make up hypothetical values. A lot of students, here is what they do on the multiple choice. And I mean, personally, I think, well, let me just go ahead. Let's say this guy is 0.60. Personally, I feel like instead of actually writing down all the numbers is 0.60 plus, let's say this 0.045 is equal to 0.03 x plus 1. Okay, it's just repetitive trying to write down, looking at your formula sheet, writing down all the numbers, making X a subject, and then end up punching the same values into the calculator. It's a complete waste of time, in my opinion. For example, in order to quickly do this, 0.610 x minus 0.103x, we've got 0.103 minus 0.1045. They will go ahead and simplify this guy and write the final value down here, equal to simplify this guy, right? The final value down here with an x, and then end up dividing through by whatever the coefficient of x would be. Why don't we do it this way? So why don't we do it this way? So okay, this guy's not gonna often have this problem. I try to erase stuff and it won't erase. And I don't want to just undo it. So, okay. So, okay. So on the exam, here is one strategy I adopt. I know the value of A is going to come from the LTAM table, B as well, and Y as well. Okay. So I quickly map this guy to X. It means I have stored the variable A in my calculator on X, in X, right? The calculator has, let me just navigate back to the calculator. The storing stuff is right here, right? We can see there is an X. Okay, I need to wipe the screen, restart, enter. Okay, actually, second quick. Okay, so you can store in X, you can store in Y, you can store in Z. There is a T, we have A, B, and C. So basically 7 variables available for us to be storing stuff, right? So one of the things something I recommend you do, quickly do a mapping. A is being mapped to X means you've stored it in X. This guy, you've stored it in Y. This guy, you've stored it in what? In Z. So that when you move anything with a coefficient of X onto one side of the equation, all you need to do, you actually don't need to repeat all the steps down, right? You punch. So I'm going to have AX minus what B. I may actually change color to make it much better. So AX minus what BX is just going to be equal to, what do I have here? I have B minus Y, B minus Y. Okay. So yeah, so you can, and of course, you know that the coefficient of A minus B is the guy going to be dividing, this very guy in order to give you the value of X, which is pretty simple. You've got B stored you've got B stored, you've got Y stored, you've got A and A stored as well. So it becomes very easy for you to work out this problem by just calling the numbers you've stored, right? If you want to call that, there is a recall button, and actually you don't need to use the recall button, right? If I stored the number 45, for example, store in X, and I hit store in X, okay, and I do second quit, okay, and I want to call the value of X, you don't need a recall function at all. You just hit on X, you just hit on the variable X, and if I add the variable x to 5, I expect the final answer to be 50, right? Because x is the value of x is 45. Okay, so you can just call it anytime if you need to do some sort of division, right? X divided by, let's say, the number 9, which obviously will give us 5, that can easily be done. So this type of stuff you can easily do on your calculator. So one of the things I'm going to be emphasizing is learning how to store the variables in your calculator, especially not only the multiple choice, but also the written answer portion. It comes with time, and as you keep practicing some of these things, you realize the amount of time you can spend on the multiple choice, for example, would reduce, and you save a ton of time for the most toughest question, probably on the written answer portion. So storing variables is really one of the things that I'm going to be emphasizing. Let me just, go through one more example. So this, so question number 8 on spring 2021, arguably you can tell all of these numbers need to be pulled from the table, right? So instead of repetitively writing down on your script or your paper, all right, I'd rather just set it up. And once you set it up, you do what? You just stare, you store, and then you know how to do the arithmetic. Basically, the arithmetic just becomes doing stuff on your calculator. Okay, so just one little more demonstration to show how I avoid trying to like, store a bunch of things on my calculator. I'm gonna be using, I think I have written answer question number 2. So let me just jump to written question on answer number written question 2, for example. Okay, so this question, without even bothering yourself about the details, okay, how fast can you estimate the value of G? Okay, of course, one of the best ways to do this, and we'll talk about that, we'll talk about the fact that so we actually, nobody cares about all your algebra steps you follow to derive the answer choice G. Nobody cares about that. What they care about is, do you know how to set it up? When you set it up, it's enough. And maybe you have 2 or 3 more lines, which leads to the answer, but don't be that type of person who would write about 7 different lines down just in showing that the value of G is equal to 2050. It's just a complete waste of time. So set it up, get to a point where you know it's enough to just calculate the value of G, just put the value of G right there. We'll be looking at some of those simulations later. But how would I do this? Of course, I've got stuff stored down. So one of the things I can do, if the goal is to estimate the value of G, which is obvious in this question, I can punch, right? I can punch 360,000 times this annuity function, or right here, the 20-year term insurance. I can punch this whole guy and then store it in the calculator, right? So let me just create a hypothetical stuff here. Say you have, 50 AX colon 2 term plus, let's say, just about 2 a double dot x colon 2 as well, and this is equal to p a double dot x colon 3, just hypothetically. Okay, I'm gonna add one extra term here. Well, let me just make it this way. I'm gonna put a parenthesis here, so 50 is multiplying all of this guy. One way I can do this, right, is just look on the table. If I need to depend on the table, punch this guy on the calculator, plus 2 times punch this guy in the calculator. Of course, we need to specify the value of X to be able to do this, to be able to look at values on the table. But I would punch this guy plus 2 times whatever the number is, and then multiply it by 50 and map the whole of this guy to X. So you want to make sure you are mapping things on your script to know what variable, what term is being stored in what variable. Really important, and this also comes with practice, because as I do this, maybe there is an extra term. Okay, I just made up this question anyway. Maybe there's an extra term. There are 2 more terms. So I'm just lumping the terms together and showing that this has been stored in X. The other 2 terms will be stored in what Y and Z as well. Follow the arithmetic. For example, if it had to be X minus what Y plus Z is equal to this P A double dot X colon angle 3 here. You've got this guy can easily be looked up on the formula sheet. So you would just basically punch in this in your calculator because you've stored them, call the values, punch it in, and just divide through by whatever needs to the coefficient of P is in order to arrive at your answer. So things like this is what I will be highly emphasizing in the course of this throughout the session. So hopefully I'm making some sense to you guys, but these are some of the ways that you can employ to save a lot of time on the exam. Any questions so far? I know I've been the only person ranting, but any questions so far? Okay. The other thing is that
Hello?
yep, please go
Sorry,
ahead.
I was on mute.
Okay.
I joined a little late. How do
Okay.
we access the manual you're using?
Oh, please just email Howard, and Howard would pass your information over to me, or you can just feel free to email me. But I prefer you going through Howard, and Howard would just pass your information to me, and then I'll pass it on to my very good friend Yufan, and Yufan would pass it on directly to you.
Okay.
He's pretty responsive, so it should be pretty quick. Excellent. The other thing is that I will be making some assignments as well. I want to give you guys the opportunity to present. One of the things that I found is the more I teach this stuff, the more I even understand it much better, and the more I talk about it, the more the concept even sticking within me. So I will be assigning stuff to you guys. It's not like I'm picking on you guys or anything, but see that as an opportunity to retain some of the to retain LTAM concept also. So just to make the class a little bit more live, so I wouldn't be the one always talking. I think it's fun that way, engaging you guys. Excellent. So with all my ranting about how to save time, which is what we all want to do, understand the intuition behind the formulas, memorize the formulas, and learn strategies in being time efficient. And I highly encourage you guys to read Yufan's. So those of you who joined late, I mentioned that you should try to read this very portion, maximize partial credits for written answer portion. It is well written, not really general at all, very specific. He gave really concrete examples on how you can maximize partial credit when given certain types of questions. So, and feel free to read this carefully and start adopting some of these strategies as you practice. The last thing I'd share before jumping on into reviewing the LTAM table is it is also really important to learn to move on this exam. So when I took the exam, my strategy, ASM, it was very painful to pass this UFANS exams. I barely even scored an 11 or well, actually a couple 16s here and there, but some of them were just so challenging that I could barely even score an 11 on those. Here is the strategy that I adopted personally, and I just feel like sharing. So after practicing 13 ASM questions and all of five, UFAN had five practice exams at that time. So basically, I did 18 practice exams in total, really ambitious. Yes, I know. But the takeaway here was, how can I be time efficient, even after practicing as much as I had done in the past? What's the best way to be time efficient? So, and what strategy can I uniquely carve for myself? The strategy I came up with is I want to go into the exam and focus on 15 MCQ questions. It doesn't really matter. Even if I'm able to do all 15 MCQ questions and I'm sure of the solution within 30 minutes, I am not going to look at the remaining five problems. Because the remaining five problems, if each one of them would take me 6 minutes to do, then by five, that's about 30 minutes. 30 minutes can solve one full written answer question. So my strategy going into the exam was to do 15 MCQ questions and stop. It doesn't matter. On that day, thankfully, I was able to do 15 questions in 1 hour, 2 minutes. Thankfully. And I stopped. Went right into the written answer portion. Lo and behold, the strategy I had there is do the easiest question first. And because I'm very mathy, I enjoy the proofs type of thing. Those are the ones that I find, really quick for me to do. And those are easy. So I do the easy problems first, right? And then in that order. The thing I did, and I just say this, just to motivate people, is that I did 4 out of 6 questions concretely, and I felt like I had so much time left to even review 2 extra problems and the 5 written answer questions. Here is how I optimized it. And I learned that from one of UFAN's exam, because that exam is just brutal. So what I did was the remaining time, I did. I told myself it makes sense for me to just go back to the 5 remaining MCQ because those are extra point. Just imagine getting 18 out of 20 on the MCQ. That's like 36 out of 40. You're pretty close to like just passing the exam. So again, my preparation was 15 MCQs, and then I get 4 questions done. And sometimes it doesn't have to be full, because some of the sub questions might be a little bit challenging and it might be done halfway. Don't worry. Just do what you can do. Employ the maximum, the employ, how to maximize partial credit kind of stuff in there, and get whatever you can do there. Get it done. At least you marry. If it's 10-point problem and you end up getting 7 out of 10, that's much better than just getting a 3. Okay, so all the 4 problems really doesn't mean it was 100% done. There was some potholes, and I actually filled in the potholes by employing what UFIN suggested. I did all of that, went back to the 5 problems. Lo and behold, I was able to add 3 out of what? The 5 questions. So, and I'm fully convinced that 18 questions was a done deal for me. At that point, I knew I had still had about 45 minutes remaining, which I could spend on one extra problem. So, but at that point, I already knew I had passed the exam. So, but I didn't want to be complacent at all. I'm not that type of person. So I still went on ahead to do what I can do within that 45 minutes. And I got it done. I wasn't able to do it fully. So whatever partial way that I can do the problem was exactly what I did on that day. And I was able to pass the exam. Pass the strategy onto my IABA folks, those who passed in the spring 2021, and I think it worked out pretty well. To the extent that, you know, folks even completed three concrete, but of course, if you're doing 3 concrete, you need to make sure you do you know, 3 other problems, you know, halfway, even if it's just 2 that you can do on each of the 3 remaining, at least it earns you some partial credits. So I've got feedback like, oh, I was only able to do 4. I ran out of time. I didn't even do the other 2 at all. But you know, the MCQ, like you said, you know, I just got 16 questions done. They still passed the exam with a 6 and a 7. So, and again, this is the principle of learning how to do it, move on. Is this exam strategy in the PDF? So UFN teaches how to maximize partial credit. And he really talks about how not to waste time. Learning to move on is really, really important. I think it's somewhere here. Don't spend too much time on any problem. If a difficult problem, if the problem is too difficult, move on and come back to it later. These are the same principles that I applied. So I'd say that yes, these are on here. The only thing that I'd say is that, you know, when you learn to move on, you want to make sure you were solving the problems that you were good at. If it's a pension problem you're good at, get those pension problems done. If you struggle with multiple decrements stuff, that should come late. Whatever you know about multiple decrement, UFAN is going to show you how to get a point or 2 or 3 points when you read this very stuff. When you read his stuff. So yeah, so learning how to move on is an extremely important part of this exam. And it helps you not to waste too much time on the multiple choice. And because spending about 2 hours in the multiple choice, it's ideally not. I mean, if you do the calculation well, if you spend about 1 hour 30 minutes and getting about 15 questions done that you're confident on, and you can optimize time and also work very hard on the written answer portion, you probably should pass this exam with a 6 or a 7. So yeah. So, and again, try as you practice, the moral of the story here is that as you practice, try to focus on how to uniquely carve certain strategies for yourself. In my case, it was 15 MCQ questions, move on to the written answer portion. Focus on getting 4 questions done correctly. At least these 4 questions, 90 to 95% correct. Because if you do the calculation technically, you will get in a 7. And also because I don't know what the SOA would throw at me. I personally feel like I understood the material pretty well, but again, this is an exam. It can be my day or it cannot be my day. So the looking for 4 problems that I can do concretely and combining that with 15 questions in the multiple choice was always my idea going into the exam. But that day, thankfully, the problem was a little bit, on the easy side for me. So I was easily able to burst through 5 questions on the written answer portion with 18 questions done. But again, not to put any pressure on anybody, but the principle there was because I learned how to maximize time using taking advantage of the calculator and learning to move on, especially on those written multiple choice questions, I was easily able to overcome. So yeah, that's another thing that I wanted to kind of call out. Any questions before I jump on into LTAM specific related stuff? And feel free to just stop me when I'm talking. Feel free to just stop me anytime. Yep. Okay. All right. So The one thing that, and we are planning on incorporating this into UFAN's manual for spring 2022, is to talk about some of the things that, you know, most manuals really don't talk about, which has to do with the table. So before I talk, okay, I think I have that written somewhere. I was going to talk about some changes to the table. Okay, but I think I have that written down, so I'll call it out at some point. Let me just check and make sure. I think I did. Okay, so let's review the LTAM table. Pretty sure most of you have been using this table for a very long time, so just bear with me if you already know some of this stuff. It's okay. So one of the things that I talk about is the Z values here. These Z values are basically would be, you can see this in the survival estimation portion of the exam, where you're doing confidence intervals and the log transform confidence intervals. You will be using these Z values. For example, if the question asks you to calculate the 95%, confidence log transform confidence interval, okay, you can easily pull the values, the corresponding Z alpha values from here. So I think tomorrow I'm going to talk specifically about, I will go through like a review, a very succinct review of the entire syllabus. If I have time today, of course, I would start doing that today, but and just basically focusing on what are important for the exam. For example, present value random variable, it's really important for this exam for annuities and insurance, because you see that in loss at issue random variables. So we want to make sure that we know how to formulate this present value random variables for annuities and insurances. But what I wouldn't go through right now is really specific stuff, So if you're to do the 95% log transform confidence interval, I hope you all know that this 95% in value, it's now going to be 1.645 in this case, because the log transform confidence interval deals with a two-way hypothesis testing. And so what actually needs to be done is to do this 1 plus that divided by this, which gives us 97.75. Oops. So we have 97.5 what percent. So this is what would actually emerge, and what is 0.975 value correspond to? It corresponds to 1.96. Okay, so you wouldn't have to struggle and be looking for the value from the table. You've got to make sure all of these are given to you, except for this confidence interval stuff that has to do with two-way hypothesis testing. All of the others, when you're calculating the percentile, the 90th percentile of an annuity or an insurance, you just pick, I mean, if it has to do with, let's say, normal approximation stuff, right, where you use a normal distribution, you don't need to, that does not conform with the two-way hypothesis testing concept. So if it is 95%, stuff you're doing via the normal approximation, you only pick the 1.645. So again, the moral of the story here is know the essence of this values given here in the table. It's also important to know that the 50%, which is the median and the mean of the normal distribution, basically, right? The 50%, the middle, right? The middle always corresponds to a Z of 0. And you will need this kind of concept, especially when you're working on you're working on the Lee-Carter model or the Keynes-Blick-Dowd model, when calculating quantiles. So I guess we can ask you to calculate the 50% quantile. And if you do know that the 50% quantile basically maps into a Z value of 0, it's a pretty handy shortcut that you can easily use to do that. So the story again here is that 50% correspond to what? 0. It's also one of the key things that you've got to make sure you internalize. So this table, yep. So I move on next here. The other for the table, my assumption is that most of you have been using this table a lot of time, right? So the most important story to tell here is that the annuity functions and the insurance functions are all valued at I is equal to 5%. So please, it is important to pay particular attention to the question. I see a question. Did we get a syllabus with the professor's contact information? That's a very good question. So I have that in preparation. Um, I type in it in LaTeX and I'll put all of that in there. So I apologize that I didn't mention that at the very beginning, but I will surely do that tomorrow. I'll share the syllabus with you guys and with all the different stuffs that I talked about, summaries of all the things that I talked about. Thanks for calling that out, Ruth. Great. So the annuity and insurance functions are all valued at 5%. Really important to read the question first before you and check the interest rate before you start using functions from the table, because oftentimes they give 4% and 6%, and students confuse that with, oh, I can just look those values up from the table. That's not the case. You've got to manually work those ones out. And sometimes they actually supply those functions if the interest rate is not 5%. So it's good to keep in mind that the interest rate is 5% for the annuity and insurance functions. Okay. So the other thing that I've got to say, I think still on this table, is how to handle the pure endowment portion. Pure endowment is basically, V to the power n NPX. So this is survival contingent insurance, meaning that, the policyholder would have to survive NGS in order to receive a benefit. And this is actuarially written as NEX. Now, sometimes when you're working on you're working especially for the multiple lives, you came across something like, let's say, V30, V30, let's say, actually make it, okay, yep, I think V30 would make sense. V30, let's say 40, 60, and you've got a 30 here, right? So, yeah, if the lives are independent, of course, you can look up this very guy on the table, but it requires a lot of tricks, right? What is a trick that it's being required there? First of all, the pure endowment are given with a duration of 10 and a duration of 20, right? And the joint lives are also given with a duration of 10 only, right? Do we have a piece here? Actually, there are no piece here. But if the lives are independent, then of course you can take the product of the piece. But the story that I want to share is that, it's important to focus on the fact that you can partition this pure endowment functions in such a way that you don't necessarily have to be doing the L sub X plus what T, right, divided by L sub X, because that's just way too long to be looking for the number of survivors. If I scroll up and then doing divisions and all of that, that all takes a lot of time. So I want to call out the fact that it's you can actually partition. Let me actually make the question really simple here. Let's see this. You can partition this very guy into, so we have a V20 and we have a V10, right? So I can partition the probability here into 20p what 40. And once the life attains what H was 60, we've got what 10 more dimensions to go, basically, right? So if I shuffle this app, I can group the V20, 20p or 40. I can group those to be one, change color here to blue. And then we have a V10, 10p, 60. So pretty easy to just look up the look up the pure endowment versions on the table. Pretty easy to just look up the 10E, what's that? 10E40 and 20E40 and 10E60. Pretty easy to just look up those guys from the table. So that's just one note I've got on the um, the table. Did we have a question coming in? I had a
Yes. Yeah.
sound. Okay,
Hi,
good.
good morning. I had a question. Could you go back to the equations you were writing?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So I think you erased something that you wrote earlier, but earlier you had a notation that I wasn't familiar with. On the
Oh,
left-hand side, on the left-hand side of the second line,
mhm.
you wrote V to the 30 and then 30p 40 colon something else. I think it was like
Oh,
30p.
yeah.
Yeah, so what did that mean? It was
Uh,
like, was that a probability or a premium notation?
yeah, that's a good call. So I wrote V30, 30p 40 colon
Yeah.
60. So yeah, this is a probability notation for joint lives. Okay,
Okay, okay.
yes. So as a matter of fact, yeah, for joint life. So, are you familiar with this concept, minimum of, let's say, T sub X, T sub Y plus
Oh,
the,
yes.
do you remember that? So this guy is just the minimum, the probability that I've written, just the minimum stuff. That's how to write it actuarially. So this guy is just equal to T sub X plus what T sub Y. It's actually a really important equation to know for the exam. I think we've I will be talking about that. So this is more like the if this is an X and this guy is a Y, so we're looking at this joint life surviving 30 years basically. So that's how this will be written. Yeah, so and like I said, you can take the product of it, right? So you have, 30p 40 and 30p 60, the product of this. If the lives are independent, then this way of writing stuff just becomes what this guy, provided it's a minimum. And of course, like they would define the probability or the insurance in a way that will help you know that it's a minimum kind of stuff. And so, because if it's max, you've got to go through the Q version, the death rates and not the survival rate. But if it's minimum, you can simply take the product of what the probabilities. I think I have some questions on that, so we'll look at all of that. But yeah, good call.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Right, let's move on to what's next here? So joint lives increment of 10. So I think I already talked about that. So we can move right on to the standard sickness death model. This is also the story that I've got to tell on this. When I was studying for the exam, and I was studying with two Asian folks, and one guy was like, "What's a standard sickness death model? I've never seen this before. Is that on the syllabus?" And then two of us just kept looking at him and we go like, "Oh, bro, it's on the syllabus. You don't know that, And again, it was funny because yes, not a lot of people actually pay attention to it. Especially, when the SOA at that time, the SOA had not tested a lot of problems on it, so it wasn't really common. But these days, I think people would know what that is. But the functions are clearly given on the table, and it's important to know to understand the table very well. First of all, the table is given in a continuous manner. It is not discrete. If you need to work in a discrete manner, you do need to use a UDD or a constant force approximation to convert the continuous insurance to discrete. But in this case, I've never seen any question, not even the textbook, the third edition of the textbook. It's always been used in a continuous manner. And yes, we have written questions in a continuous manner as much, I think spring 2021, this very question, MCQ number 8, uses the standard sickness death model. And you can tell what they needed to calculate here is just a continuous annuity. So what's a morale of this of this table? First, what is this table about? Is there a transition diagram for this table? Because they keep talking about healthy state, sick state, and then the death state. So just want to call out the fact that if if 0 is the healthy state, well, let me just put, oops, why can't I? Okay. All right. So healthy state, sick state, and the dead state. This is how the transition diagram looks like for the standard sickness death model. Really important to know this because sometimes I encourage students to write the diagram down if they are confused. Just write the diagram down and you can keep track of the transitions or keep track of the cash flows. If you're doing, let's say, Thiele's differential equation, which is also in a continuous framework, it makes sense to just make a sketch of this and appropriately write down the Thiele's equation. Okay, so the story there is that this standard sickness death model conforms with this transition diagram. The other really important thing to know about this table is that it is given, the insurances and the annuities are given in terms of whole lives. So whenever you have SOA will not really give you, questions like that, whole life, they give you a term and you've got to convert the term to a whole life. Also, the survival probabilities are given in tens. And so if you have something to do in the 20s, you need to partition those. What's the solution? Spring 2020, I can just pull up something real quick on just pull up something real quick and show spring 2021. So if I go to question number 8, so clearly you can tell how Yufeng and I petitioned this guy. You've got to actually, he showed it here, the 20p50. Okay, you've got to partition the 20 into tens before you calculate. So this is an example of a question that this question is not just easy. You can spend about 6 minutes on this question and you are not even done. But with the help of the calculator and storing capability, this can be done in 4 minutes. It saves you a lot of time once you've got stuff set up. So, because look at the solution. You've got to make sure if you're writing all these pieces of information down, it's just too much repetitions of things you are rewriting from the table back on your script. It's a waste of time, in my opinion. Good. All right, so you have 20s or 30s or 40s. You've got to make sure you partition them recursively into turns, into tens, and then you can take advantage of doing stuff like that. Okay, so that's what I've got on the standard sickness death model. The probabilities are in tens. Whenever you have durations other than 10, you've got to like write a recursive formula for that. The transition diagram is also very important. The annuity and insurance factors are all in whole lives. So if you have a term, you need to convert those to a whole life as well. Okay. Nothing I've got on the standard service table, except that this is a multiple decrement framework where we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 decrements. Nothing really special here that I've written down. Questions will come on that. Interest rate functions evaluated at I. So all of these are very useful, especially for when you have a UDD. The yeah, hopefully you guys know that the alpha sub m and beta sub m do have functions when you're working in when you're working UDD stuff. You might probably need the alpha m and beta m. You don't need to calculate them using this guy that I've highlighted here. Go straight on ahead to pick the M that fits into either yearly, semi-annually, quarterly, or monthly. Just pick the alpha M and the beta M's from here. Okay, you don't need to evaluate them from first principles using these formulas. So wanted to call out the usefulness of this very table. And sometimes if you're working, you might need the I upper M and D upper M depending on the question. So those functions are also available here. Then you don't have to recall the FM formulas on top of your head. You can just pull up the numbers from here. And the ratios are also given. So really good to pay attention to that. The Maychem's law, so this is a popular mortality forecasting model used in demography and actuarial applications. This is the version. The force of mortality is given this way, and the TPX version had already been solved over here. So what's the story to tell? Let's go back to spring 2021 exam. So one person that reached out to me, one of my interviews that I had with a person, I found out that the person really didn't pay enough attention during the spring 2021 exam. And all due respect to this person, but I'm just saying attention in a sense that, SOA will not specifically tell you on the exam that use the Maychem's formula or the Gumpet's formula. I'll come to Gumpet's pretty soon. They are not going to tell you that. Look at spring 2021. They carved a question, and what was the preamble here? Mortality follows the standard ultimate life table. The force of mortality on the standard ultimate life table, as they wrote this, they did not particularly call it a Maychem's model, but it's on you, the student, to know that this model here, it's a Maychem model and with these set of parameters. So that in calculating the probabilities, you don't have to be doing integration. Because if you want to do integration on this exam, on this particular question, right? TPX, oops, I flipped it. TPX is equal to EPX, integrate from 0 to a t, mu of x plus to a t dt, this formula. Imagine just doing this for this guy and plugging in the values of A and B. Oh my gosh. You just probably get confused, and especially integrating c to the power x is a lot of pain. The derivative with respect to t of c to the power t, right, is equal to the natural logarithm of c, the constant c, times c to the power t itself. This is not the same as the derivative of with respect to c, where we have c to the power t. This would have been t, c to the power t minus 1. But we actually, in this context, we are taking the derivative with respect to what? The exponent t, and that is quite different from what we know from the power rule in calculus. Okay, so all of these need to come into play in order to get the answer. Well, what would the integral be? Integrating c to the power t with respect to t is equal to c to the power t over the natural logarithm of c plus the constant c, because I'll just use the constant k because this guy is an indefinite integral. So if you had to do integration on the exam, you probably have to know that this is what you have to do, because this is very painful. So what's the story here? If you do know this is the Mayhem's model, and let's look at our solution here. Let's look at so it should be, I should minimize it a little bit. Oh, okay, I need to scroll down a little bit. So question number, okay, written answer question number 1. So we did call out that from the LTAM table, you should find a formula, which is this from the LTAM table. So in calculating this survival probability, you can see how we did a calculation, basically just plug 0.5 into, in place of T, in place of this very formula right here, TPX, you don't need to integrate because it's been given to you on the exam. It's the story I'm trying to tell. So being aware of this model is really important. The other thing that I want to share is that if you have a version of the Mayhem's model, the version of the Mayhem's model where A is equal to 0 and you have B, C to the power X is equal to what mu sub X, this is called the Gompertz model. Okay, the Gompertz model is when A is equal to 0. So fall 2021, if SOE come up with a profit testing question or a reserve question and you have this force of mortality, this type, quickly remember this is the Gompertz model with this is the Mayhem's model with A to be equal to what, 0. And you can, wherever you see the survival probability here, you assume A is equal to 0. So it becomes anything apart from -80. Okay. Any questions at this point? I'd like to take, 5 minutes break. I'd like to take 5 minutes break in the next 3 minutes. So any questions as I go through some of this stuff? Okay, well, now we come to the three-term Woolhouse formula in a single decrement context. So this is a portion that I'd want to call out that if we go to the SOA website, really important information. So let's navigate to LTAM. So I go to ASA, and then I go to LTAM. There is an update right there. This update was made on 2nd August 2021. What is this update about? And I'm trying to look for problems on that because it's in the textbook. The notation and terminology note has been updated, and the tables, the LTAM tables have been updated as well. So I'm actually using the updated version of the table. And what's the update here? The update here is that they added the three-term Woolhouse formula in a multiple decrement context. So this can be anytime they do some of these things, especially because the three-term type approximation or the two-term type approximations often, are used for annuities, especially. This can show up on the written answer portion. We never know. It can show up on the multiple choice, but my bet is that they might end up writing a question, a really simple question on the multiple choice, which has to do with the multiple decrement. With the application of the Woolhouse's formula in the multiple decrement context. So I really want to call this out that the table has been updated. So going into fall 2021, you should expect to see 2 extra formulas being added to the table, okay? And we'll talk about that, in the course of our meetings. They also made a note here that the candidate is expected to know how to convert these formulas to the two-term approximation. So they can easily make a written answer portion where they ask you to apply the two-term approximations with a multiple decrement profit testing question or a reserving question. And yeah, okay. Good, but I'm definitely going to find a problem on that, especially because they made the update just in 2021, August 2021. So we never know. Maybe in the fall they might test a question on that. So I've got to make sure I work with UFAN to write just a question on this. Okay. So it's 10:15 a.m. My time, Central Time, 11:15 Eastern Time. So why don't we all take a 5 minutes break and then converge 10:20 my time or 11:20 Eastern Time. I will be around just in case you want to ask any questions. You want to ask any questions about the program or how to use UFAN's manual or anything, and there are no restrictions regarding that. So I'll just be around if anybody wants to ask any question. Just grabbing water.
I had a quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
When it says the candidate is expected now to convert these formulas to two terms of proclamation, for these two, would it just be removing the last term?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
I have a quick question. The tables that you have right here, when you take the exam, will this be like a physical sheet of paper or will it all be on the computer?
It will be a physical sheet of paper.
Okay.
Yeah. And that also makes it easy to underline stuff because I have done this thing before where I'm looking on my screen while practicing. I actually didn't print out the tables when I was doing my practice. So I wanted to pull, let's say, L95 and I went to pull L94, did the calculation and I'm totally off and I don't know what I did wrong. So yeah, it helps to just use your pencil to like sort of point to what you need to type into the calculator or what you need to write down.
Got it. So you're pretty much in front of a screen for the multiple choice section of this, but you have the written part, like I guess in front of you. So if you want to switch back and forth, you can do that. And like I guess the timer is on the computer. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And you guys correct me if I'm wrong. Those of you who have taken it before, that's what it is, right?
Yeah, I took it in the spring. You get the full exam and then it's the timer.
Okay, good. Oh, you get a full exam, but isn't the multiple choice?
No, they give you a packet. It's your full. They give you your full exam, and you just kind of. Unfortunately, you lose like 5 minutes when you're typing in like your exam number and book number and stuff. Because when the timer starts, you still have to fill in the bubbles like your name, your book number. So you lose a few minutes, but they give you an extra like 15 minutes maybe. So hopefully you don't have a very long name.
So the multiple choice is not CBT, but it's a full exam on paper, right?
Full exam on paper, yes.
Oh, okay. Anyways.
Yeah, the computer is strictly time.
Time. I see. Good to know.
Even the tables are on paper.
Okay.
Wait. Actually, I can't remember that part. Yeah, I think your tables are on paper too.
Yeah, the tables are on paper that somebody told me in the spring. So anyway, well, cool. Good to know. So we have about a minute to go here to complete the table. We're actually done with the table, just 2 more stuffs to look at. Okay, so it's 10:20 my time. Hopefully, folks, those who stepped away, that you guys are back. Okay. So 2 more things to do here. The Greenwood's approximation formula. This is a formula that is used for the Kaplan-Meier estimator, and they actually don't tell you on the exam, but that it's Kaplan-Meier. They only tell you using Greenwood's approximation formula. So just keep in mind, the Greenwood approximation formula is derived using what we call the delta method in statistics. So yeah, and that's for the Kaplan-Meier estimator. Whereas the variance for, so you see what they did here, they just set Greenwood's approximation formula. So the expectation is that you know that this formula is for the Kaplan-Meier estimator, but they actually said the variance formula for the Nelson-Allen estimator. They specifically called out Nelson-Allen, the other estimator's name. So let us not confuse ourselves, going into the exam. Greenwood is to Kaplan-Meier, and this variance formula given here is for the Nelson-Allen estimator. And during my review tomorrow, I'm going to touch on what is important to know before you start jumping on to doing practice exams. So I'm going to do like a general review of that. And one of the things I'll talk about would be the extrapolating survival probabilities under this estimation concept, where we use Brown, Kohler, and Hollander, and there is a Klein and all of that, and why do we even need to do extrapolation at all, and so on and so forth. And again, these are just summaries of what I would talk about. So the goal of the program itself is to get you guys right into working problems, and also get together as a team to discuss how to combat these problems and look at what flaws we do have and how we can, correct those flaws before the main exam. So good. That was a review on the table. Really, really important to understand the table going in. So I hope folks will spend a little bit of time. If you do have access to the 3rd edition of the manual, or Coaching Actuaries, or TIA, please check on the introduction of the 2 formulas, which is a 3-term Woolhouse formula in a multiple decrement context. Try to see if you can find an example of how this is even applied at all. And hopefully you can learn something from it. But I'm still gonna come up with a question and bring that for us to solve. But in your own interest, please do try to find a couple problems on how these 2 can be applied. Excellent. So now let's talk about real thing, what practice exams to take, and how, and this is very much open, once we agree on how to, what to take. And then the question is, what do you guys think makes sense in terms of how to take the exam? Okay, so let me navigate back to Yufeng's stuff here. I go to 10 practice exams to scroll down. I want us to start with practice exam 5. Oh my goodness, I need to talk about something. So one thing that I have been talking to Yufeng about, and he's not a fan of including answer choices in the multiple choice for a practice exam. You guys would have to bear with me. I know this kind of sound like it's not really reflective of the main thing, but we can look at the positives also, right? As he shared, the positive side is he wants people to build endurance. He wants people to learn how to move on. And as you learn these two important traits that are, traits for this exam, it makes it easy going into the real thing and having seen multiple choice options, right? So he doesn't have multiple choice answer options for you, so you wouldn't know whether you were wrong or correct. And that's kind of something that I'm trying to talk to him like, well, why don't we make some of the problems, have options and some of them don't have options? Yeah, he's been doing this for the past 16 years, and he totally disagrees with me that he wouldn't want to do it that way. So just bear with me, but I can promise you for sure, this is what I did, and he helped me work 15 problems, 1 hour, 5 minutes. So hopefully that's the magic for all of you as well. So practice exam 5 is going to be the starting point. And here's the take. I encourage all of you not to do this exam leisurely. Okay, put yourself under time constraint, 4 hours, 15 minutes. You have a 15-minute read through, okay? Spend 15 minutes to read through. And then right after 15 minutes, jump on in and start working on the time condition. Do all of it, and it will be painful. I promise you that it will be painful. For the first time, if you haven't started doing practice exams in the time condition, it's going to be very painful. And this exam here is actually a little bit tough. And I chose it because I want us to learn a couple things from this exam. There's a lot to learn. To me, this particular exam summarizes a lot of things on the exam. So don't feel pressed down if you don't do well on this exam. The goal is for you to be able to get opportunity to review the solutions, make sense out of the solutions. Email me if you have any questions regarding any specific question and why the form, you maybe don't understand the solution, it's not pretty clear. Feel free to email me and I will do my best to get on a Zoom call with you. And okay, I see a question coming in. Do you think there is anything wrong with using our formula notes for the first few practice exams until we start? That's actually a really good question. You know what? I think we can do that. So Megan is asking, do you think there is anything wrong with using our formula notes for the first few practice exams until we start to have concepts memorized? I don't think it's wrong. Honestly, I do not think it's wrong because it's very well fitted for how Yufeng has written his questions, because there are no answer choices for you. So you wouldn't even know if you're correct with the algebra or not. You wouldn't know. Okay. So let's all agree. For the first 2 practice exams, use your formula notes to do this. And I highly encourage that you guys do so. The caveat, though, is that when you're reviewing the solutions, please do not just stare. Okay, so this is the format. You've got all the questions. Hopefully you guys can see my screen. Yep, you've got all the questions from 1 to 20. Then you go to the written answer portion, okay? You do all of this, and then once you were done, question number 6, once that comes to an end, the next page has the solutions to practice exam 5. And he actually did it in a very nice way, because you've got the question repeated and then the solution. You've got question repeated and then the solution, and so on and so forth. So yeah. So to Megan's question, yep, I do encourage you guys to use your formula notes for the first 2 practice exams. But the caveat is that when you are reviewing the solution, please do not just stare at the solution and go like, oh, I see what I did wrong. Yeah, I see what I did wrong. No, pen it down. Make sure you actually writing it down. For those of you who speak French, there's an adage in French that says, la parole s'envole, mais le cri demeure. The spoken word always vanishes, but the written remains, and that's the sort of thing that I want you guys to apply here, right? When you write certain things down, you tend to remember even the mistakes you made, versus just staring at the solution and go like, oh, I see what I did. I see what I did wrong. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'll make sure this doesn't happen. No. Write it down, rewrite the solution, read the question again, and work the solution from scratch. Make sure you got it 100% before you move on. It's the ideal thing I want you guys to do. So again, so we're only doing 1 practice question for the week. And here's what I'll promise you, it's gonna be particularly challenging. So when you were, say you take the exam on Tuesday and you grade yourself, no matter the outcome, you spend extra 2 days to review the solution. Find another day to rework everything in 4 hours. And your goal is to make sure you get 80% correct. Ideally, I would be more ambitious and say you get 90% of the questions correct is the ideal thing I'd say. 80% is probably below the bar. 90% is very aggressive, and that's what I'd actually go in for. Because when you retake it, you're trying to recall formulas, you're trying to take advantage of using the calculator, you're also trying to also see if you need to move on. Maybe you just end up making a particular mistake, and you need to move on. So you learn how to practice some of these things easily when you retake the exam. And also to make sure that you understood the solutions that you reviewed. And so taking it for the second time, is ideal. Okay. So that's why I wouldn't assign 2 problems per week. 1 problem to offer you, 1 really tough problem to offer you the chance to rework the problem under time condition after doing it the first time. And please, when you're doing it the second time, do not use your formula sheet when you're retaking it. The first time you do it, use a formula sheet, but the second time, on a practice exam, if we run out of time, should we actually leave questions blank or should we attempt before grading? So in a practice exam, if we run out of time, should we actually leave questions blank or should we attempt before grading? Okay, that's also really good question. So let's try to mimic the real thing. Do not attempt it. Is what I'll recommend. Don't attempt it. Grade it, and once you grade it, get your score. Review the solutions, and hopefully, when you retake the exam, you should be able to attempt that particular question because you have reviewed it. Okay, will be my suggestion. But really good question, Megan. Good. So yeah, couple things. Okay, well, I will say that next week when we meet. The other thing that I was going to say is that when we meet next week, we're meeting tomorrow, yes, to look at a brief overview of all the stuff on the syllabus, what is really important to it. But I'm trying to say that I will, as part of my syllabus, I'm also going to make sure I incorporate topic areas that I have, my gut feeling tells me will be tested for fall 2021. I'll put some of those topics there as well. But the goal is not to focus on those topics, but to make sure that you guys are able to find problems on those topics and to solve. Of course, when I write out those ones, the problems, enough problems are already in UFane's manual. So most of the times I'll be using UFane's manual to do to demonstrate some of these topics. Okay, I'll be doing that. And feel free to use his manual to review some of the stuff. He's got really great ways to teach Kolmogorov-Fouet equations and Thiele's differential equations, a really intuitive way to think about it. And I'll also talk about thinking about, especially that the TDE as an accountant. I'll talk about some of these things for sure. Okay, so to the person who asked a question about that survival probability, so we do have actually a question on practice exam 5, which looks like finding this interesting insurance question, annuity, which is for 2 lives. So you guys will have a lot of fun with that, I guess. Okay, good. So yeah, that's that for practice exam. So the exam will be practice exam 5, and I hope to start reviewing practice exam 5 with you on next week, Saturday and Sunday. But my take on that also is to offer you guys a chance to present. If that's okay, then maybe I can chime in, because that makes the class a lot more engaging, you know. So throughout the week, I will be reaching out to you guys individually via phone call, just checking in how, you know, studies is going, what your timelines are to complete practice exam 5. And I will pick some people to, you know, talk to some people to present part of the solution. So I'm actually going to share it. And I want you guys to do a lot of the talking, right? And the part I'm really interested in is using the calculator and how you can optimize time to do some stuff. Okay, so we still have a couple more minutes to go. One thing that I'd want to just cover over here before we go would be to talk about some of the advantages of using the calculator. Some things you can use the calculator to do. Let's look at spring 2021. Is it spring 2021? I think so. Spring 2021. There was a question on, okay, I think it's this question. Calculate N. Was there another one where you had to calculate an I also? Okay, no. Well, so I'm going to use spring 2021 to demonstrate something that the calculator can do. So let me clear and do second reset. Number 2, enter and clear my memory. So the very first thing I want to talk about is what we call the table function. This table function, is there a way to clear all of these? Let's say, oh, new scripts. Yeah, it's bottom of center. Oh, I see it pulled up something on the side. Oh, Justin says bottom of center. Oops, I don't even know what I'm doing with this emulator right now. Oh, it actually cleared it. Let me see. Okay, second quit. I'll clear one more time. Okay. Yeah, I think it should be showing, right? Oops. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's not showing. I might have done something wrong. Anyways, so here's what I want to illustrate. Okay, I see. Stop recording when done. I have to go. Okay, that's from Howard. All right, so let's see how to take advantage of the table function. Now, the table, how useful is a table function? The table function is useful this way. I used it, I taught this to the International Association of Black Actuary folks for P and FM, for example, especially for FM when you're solving some problems, and they love to construct problems in such a way that you end up with a quadratic function or in some type of cubic polynomial, and then you solve for the interest rate I and so on and so forth. And sometimes it can be very difficult to even juggle between the algebra and all of that. And also how useful this is. For example, if you have a final answer to solve and the final answer is a quadratic in nature, the quadratic negative b plus or minus a square root of what b squared minus 4ac all divided by 2a. Suppose this is what you need to solve the final answer. You can actually ignore this by ignore the formula and take advantage of the calculator, the calculator's table function. How is that done? We are basically going to try the values of n in the table function, okay? So I'm going to cheat over here because of time. Let me look at the solutions. So just as a way to demonstrate, so let me go to solutions to recent exams and open that question that I co-authored with Yufeng. So question number, where are you? Okay, so the value of number 4, the value of n is equal to 12. And again, it depends on the version of the version of the exam that you might be using, right? Depends on that version. So I'm trying to grab my own calculator here to enable me to be to work a little bit first. So yeah, let me polish this algebra a little bit. So we've got this equation of value here is equal to 0.72. How can I use a table function to do that? The first two products are actually numbers, but these ones have to do with a variable n. So I'm going to calculate this product and divide through by 0.72, okay, and have something on the right-hand side. How is that done? 1 minus 10 on that is 9 divided by 10, right? Times, I have 1 minus 1, I have 1 minus, 9 inverse, which is also 0.8, and then divide, okay, take the inverse of that, times what, 0.72, and I have 0.9. So here's what I'm going to write. Let me wipe the screen. So, and write that 1 minus 1 over 8 plus n. So I'm going to write that down. 1 minus what? 1 over 8 plus what? N times 1 minus, what's the other one? The other one is 1 over, 1 minus 1 plus 7 plus n. Okay, so 1 over 7 plus what? N is equal to 0.9. What I've done here basically is to remove the other products, right? By dividing through by both sides of the equation. So divide through by 0.72, and I have 0.9. So I'm going to demonstrate how to use the table function to do this question. So now let's go here. Let's go to our emulator. Go to table function. Now, so I open a bracket. I can do, open a bracket, do 1 minus, right? Do this n on d. So I have 1 over. So in using the table function, it only works in terms of it's a one variable equation. So the value of y depends on x. So you can only use the variable x here. I think you could actually, I've not tried the other ones before, but just to be safe, use x. So we have x plus what? Oops, it's actually 8 plus x. So I'll just say that, right? Close the bracket. Please do not, in order to use the table function, the only language this understand is to use the multiplication sign. If you omit the multiplication sign in this very instance, it's not gonna give you, it will arrow out. So we want to make sure this guy in parentheses, there is a multiplication sign times right here. Okay, so we do the same thing for this one. So open a bracket, do a 1 minus, and then open this guy, and we have 1 over, this time it's 7 plus x. And because I'm doing it here, it's pretty slow for me, but trust me, if I'm on my calculator, I work a lot more faster. Okay, so I've constructed this. So what's the next step? Once you're fully done with constructing your equation, just go ahead and hit enter. When you hit enter, there is something that I learned from Maduri. I will illustrate that pretty shortly, but I will use the my very primitive approach would be to navigate to Ask X. Ask X means you have options that you want to try out, right? So you want to provide the values of X and see if that would be equal to 0.9. So how do we do that? You just continue hitting enter. If you hit enter again, it gets to auto. Enter again. Oops, actually, I need to go back. Okay, it's an auto right now, and you can use the navigation bars, the forward, backward, upward, and all of that. So once it's on auto, I need to use the forward button to navigate it to Ask X. And once Ask X is blinking, I hit enter again. I think hit enter again, and it moves, it shows highlighted Ask X, and you navigate to OK. Once you do, hit enter again, a screen of X and Y appears, right? So the common thing I do tell people will be start testing answer choice C. What's the answer here? It does happen that the answer choice here is B, okay, in this case. So let's test answer choice C and C. So when you test answer choice C, depending on the direction, you know whether to move up or down. But again, in the heat of the moment, you can just start from A, B, C, D, E, whatever. It doesn't really matter here. So what is C? C is equal to what? 6. So let me put in the value of X is equal to 6. Hit enter. I have 6 over 7. Well, 6 over 7. I wish you would have given us in decimals. Sometimes it does if it's not unique, right? So 6 divided by 7 is basically 0.85, is 0.85, okay? And 0.85 is not anywhere close to 0.9. Let's test the real answer choice, which is B, and see something. Answer choice B is 5. If I plug in, if I test the value of X is equal to 5 and I hit enter, did I do it wrongly? Hang on. Let me check and see. Maybe I didn't do something well. So hang on. D. Okay. Right. So let me check my arithmetic once again. Navigate to the question. So check my arithmetic here. It's going to be 1 minus 10 inverse. I probably messed it up. Times we have 1 minus 9 inverse. which is 0.8. Take the inverse of that times what, 0.72. I have 0.9. So that should be correct. So why am I not getting, let me see. So did I set it up correctly? Let me just check. 1 minus, let me check again. 8 plus n and 7 plus n. Check again. So let me 1 minus 1 over 8 plus that. And this guy, come on. 7 plus that. Okay. Ask X. So, why is it failing? I'm getting the same results.
I think the answer is 12. It's right. It's just the answer choice is wrong. Because the answer shows n is equal 12. If you do n equals 12, it's 0.9.
Oh, I know what happened. Okay, so it's the other paper. Thanks for pointing that out. Let me go pull the other paper up. We saw for the first day, 25th. We didn't do it for the second day because it was just like SOA changing numbers. Thanks for pointing that out. I was like, what? Anyway, okay. So let me just go to past problems and that. Yeah, that makes sense now. Okay, so it should be this guy, exam 1. So yeah, so maybe there might be exam 1. So oh, so we did for exam 2. I don't even remember. Let me check exam 2. Oh, okay. I think I remember what we did then. I think I remember. Yeah, I think I remember. I solved. So the answer choices here, n is 12. So yeah, that should be consistent. So I was looking at the wrong guy. Okay. So n is 12, which corresponds to. So we actually solved the second exam form. Is what we did. So if I go back and to my ask X, right? And then plug in the number 12 over here and do equal to, yay, I have 9 on 10, which is 0.9. So, yep, we've got it. So answer choice is what, 12. Okay, so this is one example to take advantage of the table function. And you can use this to do like any sort of trial and error that is so painful, like NPV, or you need to solve for an interest rate I. There is an LTAM question where I had to do with calculating, I think it was a transition probability type question, but you had to estimate the interest rate I. That was a very good question for 2020 or so. Very good question to use the table function because it results in a polynomial, and it's just writing down that really long and annoying polynomial equation and plugging things in there. You can just revert to the table function and just do trial and error. There you go. You save yourself a ton of time on the exam. So, yep. So just one thing that I really wanted to call out today. And the interesting thing is that you can use it to do all sorts of things. If I clear right now and I go back to table function, okay, there's this exam P question where it's a combinatoric something. So let's say 4 combination X times what, 0.3 to the power X. This is binomial distribution, right? 4 minus what, X. Let's say this is equal to some type of probability. Okay, of course, I need to carve out the question well, but assuming this is equal to 0.1 and you have answer choices for X, you know, of course, X can never be above 4 because of this is combination. You can easily construct this in here and you should be good. If I open this guy, I have 4, I go to prob, I scroll down to number 2, NCR combination, number 2 here. So combination X, right? I just close it. I multiply by 0.3, raise it to the power of X, and anything that you want to do with the table function, you can easily do. Basically, just wanted to demonstrate that. So just be aware of it. And whenever you have a painful polynomial to solve or some really messy algebra, clean it up a little bit and have something on the right-hand side and plug in the equation into the table function and try the possible answers. And then voila, hopefully that is that. So yeah, so kind of wanted to share that, but and then tomorrow I'll talk briefly about one other thing that you can use the calculator to do, which will be using the calculator to solve UDD and constant force type problems. I would demonstrate that using the emulator and show one of the SOA questions that that technique is extremely powerful for, and it helps you just to save about 2 minutes on the exam. So I'm going to be looking at that tomorrow. Good. All right. So yeah, I think at this point we just have 5 minutes to go. So I'll just break a little bit now for and take questions from you guys. Any questions regarding what I presented today, or general questions about the session or the LTAM exam itself? Maybe your colleagues can know, and people can help chime in if necessary. Questions?
Hello, do we have an assignment to do before tomorrow?
Oh, I love that. Okay, so I actually like that. The assignment to do for tomorrow, and thank you very much for saying that. Okay, the assignment, because it's very important. The assignment is this. I have realized that the SOA models certain questions according to the textbook. And it's really important that folks, well, not a lot of people read the textbook. I have a 3rd edition of the textbook with the solution manual because I teach the subject, so I have to read it. The interesting thing I see is that they carve certain questions according to the end of chapters exercises. Not always. The other thing is the qualitative questions on the exam are often picked verbatim from the textbook. For example, the stochastic mortality modeling, essence of the cohort effect. Is there something on Spring 2021? Just bear with me. Let me pull it up quickly. I think there was a qualitative question like that on Spring 2021. I shouldn't have closed it. Okay, I'm just quickly navigate and then I do make the assignment. So open this guy. So multiple choice, yes. I can show you where this one is from. I'll show you in a bit. It's right from the textbook. This very question here, but let me go to the written answer portion of the exam. So written answer portion, there was a cubic spline kind question. Yep, cubic spline. So here is it. So explain how cohort and age effect apply in longevity modeling. This is exactly in the reading notes. And was there another one? There is no other one. Okay, so this is something you can easily find in the reading in the readings. If you don't have access to the textbook, now the 3rd edition came into being because when MLC changed, when LTAM changed from MLC, they had in place in the fall a study note written by Mary Hattie. So this study note was what some of us had to use, and recently they gave birth to the 3rd edition because they incorporated all of these study notes into the new edition, which is now the 3rd edition. Let me put this in a chat box, but I will also go ahead and email it to the group, and add this very stuff to this to my syllabus, the link over there, so you can always click on it and it takes you right to the study note. But I can put it here. If you're sitting by a computer, you can just click on it and it would open in your tab for you. So what's the deal there? The deal here is that I want you guys to spend time to be reading the study note, and this is not really bad, thing to do. So let me see. Oh, okay. This very question, it's not gonna be. Yeah, the question number 1. Let me go to home. Yeah, that can be found you can find it in the second edition of the textbook. And I think there's a link to downloading that. I have to include the link as well. But this whole stuff right here, it's in the first few pages, I think, like chapter 1 or so. It's there. You just picked all of these guys and reversed the language, basically. So, and one of them, it's actually correct. So if you've read it before, it's like super easy to figure out. Yeah. So that means that your very first assignment here is I'm gonna assign something from this reading notes. Okay. And the assignment here is, and it will actually help you in taking UFAN's practice exam. So you are expected to read wherever you get to tomorrow, that's okay. And we'll spend about 10 minutes where I call on voluntarily for people to just talk about what they know about it, okay? So what's that? Let me scroll down. This is preface. So please read about the long-term insurance coverages. Read about the disability income insurance. What is this in practice? What are some of the features? Please focus on that. It's really actually fun, and the language is very down to earth. So DII is one. Read also on the long-term care insurance, how the practice is like in the USA and Canada and all of that. And all of these things can easily be tested in the long-term care insurance. The 6 ADLs, you've got to make sure you know some of these 6 ADLs on top of your head and all of that. So read on long-term care insurance as well. The other one would be, it doesn't hurt to read about the LTC in other countries, because you never know, the SOA can carve a question, but these are actually really fun to learn about. But long-term care insurance, the disability income insurance, the critical illness insurance is also very important for you to read. What is it like? What are some of the benefit features? It has an accelerated benefit rider. What does that mean? And so on and so forth. Get that product knowledge. Chronic illness, hospital indemnity insurance. The CCRC model has not been tested in the written answer portion yet. I bet it's it can't show up either in a discrete framework or in a continuous framework in the written answer portion. It did show up in spring 2021 in the multiple choice. I was actually very surprised. I can navigate right there. There you go. So question number 13 on spring 2021 CCRC model was tested, and it's just evaluating the value of X. So you set things up, and this is one way I show that using storing stuff on your calculator really helps you to solve this question after setting it up within 3 or 4 minutes. But nothing has yet had been written on the written answer portion. So please do make sure you review the CCRC model. What is it about? The different types of categories, know it on top of your head, because these really good way that SOE can write qualitative type questions. So yeah, and the last one would be actually, so CCRC model has a lot, and there are a lot of qualitative type questions they can ask, right? From the type of what cares that are being given, can ask you to construct compare and contrast between the different policy fees types and all the different contracts and all of that. You can be asked to do that. So make sure you read that. So your only assignment is to read on CCRC model, the disability income model, and not for tomorrow, but throughout the week. But wherever you guys get to, start in a particular order, and whatever you guys have to share tomorrow within a 10-minute time frame voluntarily, feel free to just talk about whatever you've read. Yeah, that's the assignment that I'll give for tomorrow. I'm hoping the very first one would be disability income insurance would be the first one. So whatever you guys can ascertain on that before tomorrow, and hopefully if you can read about the LTC also before tomorrow, that'll be great. Good. All right. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope to see all of you again tomorrow. And yeah, all the very best in your studies. And yeah. So last thing, okay, I talk too much at certain times, I know. Last thing is, whenever you get the Praxis Exam 5 done, please, let's keep it this way. I'll provide my cell phone number on my syllabus that I shared tomorrow. Okay, I'll provide my cell phone number there. Feel free to just send me a screenshot of all the stuff you've done, and also, or you can email it or send me a text message. I don't mind. Add your score because you're going to be grading yourself. I will take a look at it. My goal is to help you review, because I mean, it makes sense that I can't actually attend to everybody, but that doesn't mean that if you don't understand something, you can email me or text me right away. If I see it, I'll make sure I respond. But the solutions are there. So once you are done, grade yourself, see what you have, and send me the scores and send me a screenshot of what you've done. I'm definitely going to take a look at it. Yeah, to check how your algebra is going and so on and so forth, and make sure. And it doesn't have to be neat, because multiple choice is multiple choice, but I care much about the written answer portion, where I see your presentation and how I can help you to actually optimize your time a little bit. So I'm going to pay, that's why I need the screenshot from this. So email me that, or just send a screenshot via text message, and I'll definitely take a look at it and make comments. Great. So that's all for today, and I will talk to you guys again tomorrow.